Yes. Okay, welcome everybody. See some smiling faces here. So I always have to ask, and I know the answer this time. Do we have anybody that's new? Hang on a second. Make sure my clicker's going to work for me. Okay, we have somebody that's new. Raise your hand, say, I'm new. Okay, so everybody saw the hand raised. So after the meeting is over, let yourself be known, strike up a conversation, and welcome to the group. I'll get this lights. Okay. So there is so much stuff going on. It's just incredible. And I try to keep these messages short so we leave time for our speaker. So the air show is coming. The tickets are all sold. You've got tonight, next Wednesday, and next Friday to be able to pick up your tickets. And you have to pick up the paper tickets. There's no other way to get them. So either see me tonight after the meeting or next Wednesday or a week from tonight. I'll be here by 6. And then next week, we have John Paganini coming to talk about the photographer and artificial intelligence. Looks to be like just an incredible night that I'm sure everybody's going to want to see. Black and White is September 5th, the black and white print competition. We don't have very many print competitions. Remember, your entries have to be in by 7:30. And we're still looking for mentors. I believe, I don't know how many we have. Oh, Kathy's not here right now, but you can contact Catherine Kengot at her email there if you want to be a mentor. I've mentioned before, you don't have to be the best photographer in the world. Everybody's got something to share if you've been shooting for a while. And this one is really cool. David Bush has our special interest group, our SIG meetings every once a month, and he always comes up with something. So this time it's the power of glass. He's focusing on lenses, and he's breaking his talk out into 3 aspects. what are the optics and lens technology that we have today, how do you select their most versatile lens, and then exploring ways to use them. And he's actually giving this talk outside to a photography group. I think it might be, it's within this week, but so that's going to be on September 4th here in the club, 7:30. You have to either be present or be a member to see it later because it's a members only deal. Then we have a photo op field trip. This is pretty cool. It's going to be leaving from the Medina Public Square. Many of you are probably aware of Tunnels to Towers Foundation. This is an opportunity for them to showcase what they do and so forth. It's going to be running September 7th, and it's Sunday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. and is shown. Got a microphone that doesn't like me. These guys are going to be walking or running in their gear, fire or police, whatever they are. So it makes for some great photo ops. And we have another field trip. Kim is just rocking it here. This one's really unique. For all of the stuff that I mentioned that's on the calendar, go to the calendar and look. This one especially, you can click through where it says more information on the calendar, and there's a whole description of this, but it's called Fresh Fest, and it's on the Riddall Farm, which is an urban farm, and they're just doing all kinds of things. They have musical performances, a farmer's market, they have workshops, they have activities for kids. It's all family friendly. It is free, but you need to register. So look on the calendar for the details to register for that. And probably one of our most popular field trips, just letting you know, is coming, excuse me here, on October 25th. And this is one where, again, you have to register online. It's for members only, $20 per person. You can only register through the website. This is a location where they take in injured wild animals. You'll see birds and just, you don't need a long lens. It's a chance to get up close to a bird because they're going to be tethered so that you can get some bird shots close in. And they have things other than birds. And now, Wally, our own Wally Nell, who he's got all these initials after his name, abbreviations. I have no idea what they mean. Originally from South Africa. We had a program, I don't know, it's been a year, I think. You did your sports shots, just incredible stuff. And tonight he's going to talk about natural light portraits. You just came in from California shooting tennis. Is that right?
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. Oh, you weren't that far away then. But shooting tennis.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're going to welcome Wally tonight. Let me pull his presentation up for us. You're on.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So I got my love of people photography when I lived in South Africa, and I had a friend who was kind of the best that I know. I mean, he compares to some of the National Geographic photographers, and I think he's actually judged for us once. But anyway, we used to go out, and I learned a lot from him. And I did not go to college. I'm all self-taught. So yeah, let's go see what we can talk about. So that's basically what we're going to talk about. The first, we'll talk about the just basic principles, then seeing and understanding light, exposure, white balance, because that's important for skin tones, difficult times of the day, how to handle that, making backgrounds work for you, and how to interact with people and posing them. And then lastly, choice of lens, but it comes, your best lens is the one you have with you. So, yeah. So, okay. Yeah, I'll need you guys to add some stuff. A portrait captures the character of a person, and we need to help discover who the real person is and draw it out of them. It's often that the person is very shy, and you have to find ways to interact with the person to have them, come out. And it's obviously much harder when you're doing street photography, but that's still the principles. You have to be careful of dark shadows under the eyes. Needs to be a light on the eye. The eyes are the windows of the soul, so that would be the most important part of a portrait. Background you have to watch for, so your backgrounds don't compete. Be careful photographing people wearing clothing with logos, because your natural eye wants to read if there's anything readable, and it then detracts from the center of interest in facial area. Anything else that's like normal things? Anybody? All right. That's one part of it. If you're doing it in a documentary style, then maybe not. But if you're in the West, then yes, I think. What do I know? I'm just a foreigner. Okay, exposure and white balance. Possibly one of the most important things for a good portrait is that the skin tones are accurate, and you get that by having the absolute right exposure and the absolute right white balance. So learn how to do your exposures and find out what the right exposure is, and set your camera that I almost 95% of the time I walk around with my camera on manual, and I have a manual light meter I use. You kind of have to choose if you want to shoot someone where you expose for the light areas, or if you want to expose for the dark areas. What do I mean by that? If you take someone out there in the sunlight, there are shadows everywhere, and unless you're at the golden hour, all the shadows are normally in the wrong place. Your camera can't distinguish what the right exposure should be, so it puts something in the middle, so you have some bright areas and some dark areas. What I have found to work for me is to choose if I want to work in the bright areas, and that would normally be in the golden hours of dusk and dawn, or I photograph totally in the shadows. I've often just, if the sun's overhead and it comes from, say, there, I would just place people against a wall, and the shadow is just falling over them like that, but they're in the shadow, and that reflects light onto their face that is soft but directional. You'll see some of the examples. If you don't have a light meter, learn how to find the exposure by looking at your hand through the camera, and that should be about about 2/3 brighter than you should be because your hand is normally brighter. Uh, and remember that if you're shooting in the shadows, you can't shoot with um, a sun, uh, a sunlight white balance stadium because guess what? The shadows is only lit by the blue sky, so you have blue light in there. So you have to make sure that your white balance is set. If I'm shooting in the shadows, I normally have it, my white balance either on shade or cloudy, or if I'm really not sure, I take a gray card or a white piece of paper and I just do a manual white balance. It all takes time. So seeing and understanding light, you have to understand that light is always directional. That comes from the side, from the top, from behind, and you need to understand how that's going to impact your portraits. Direct sunlight versus indirect light. We've talked about that. That's either with the sun on you or window light or in the shadows. And texture, the way you get textures on a portrait for a light-skinned person, the texture is determined by shadows from side light. The way you get textures on a dark-skinned person is by highlights, and very often you get better texture from full bright on light, head-on light. Hard times of the day, woo! Don't we all know that? Of course, the best times are the hours before and after dawn and dusk. And like I said, the way that I normally handle midday light is to see if I can have the people in open shadow, because that means that they don't have that harsh light on them. Excuse me. And as a matter of fact, if I'm not doing a documentary job or a news job, I choose, if I'm walking down a street, that I will walk on the shadow side of the street, because that means all my subjects on that side of the street will be in shadow and more even light. Another way which sometimes work, not always, I have some examples of it, is to place them against the light, excuse me, and then expose for the shadows. It makes everything behind them go white, but you still have a good portrait, and you can. It would be a good possibility to change that to black and white, and that might work better than color. Okay, making backgrounds work for you. Unless you're making a photojournalistic statement, avoid anything with scripting in the background. Your eye will want to read it, and it will detract from the center of interest. Watch out for horizontal and vertical lines in the background. Try and line them up a little bit. And if you're not sure, then use the lines in the background to create a graphic view. Make sure that your background does not contain stuff that's not relevant to the context of the person. Fill your frame with a subject if you can, and either use a wide aperture to give you differential focus, or let your background tell part of the story, and then you may want to have your subject breathe a little bit and not shoot too tight. Be careful that the background does not compete with your subject. Also, watch out for highlights in the background. Interacting with people and posing. I learned a lot from watching a movie documentary of James Nachtwey. Excuse me. And he says that he just walks around slowly. He doesn't move quickly. He's respectful in his demeanor. He's not a hit and run photographer, take a picture and run get the next one type thing. He just takes his time and he makes people feel valued. If you have a chance to watch that documentary, please do it. It's mind-boggling. Be respectful of the people you're photographing. If you're in a situation where it's more sensitive, use as little camera equipment as possible, so it's not overwhelming to them. And remember that all the posing rules and suggestions still work, are still valid. For example, there's somebody in the street, and let's say it's him, and I go, and he says, okay, but now he's heading straight at me, but look what I'm doing. All of a sudden, I have a three-quarter pose. So that's one way how you can manipulate the posing and so on in a non-overbearing way. Yeah, don't take big equipment, just take this one. Okay. You do? Maybe over a beer or something. If you're photographing in another culture where one of values are shame and honor, learn to recognize that and work with it. When I lived in Egypt, it's a shame and honor culture, and people would feel ashamed if I photographed them with dirty clothes or dirty building, and they'd say, no. And I would explain to them, and now you can also do it, and you may not believe in God, but whatever you say is a light, whatever. Just tell them, God made you, He lives inside you. I want to capture the beauty of God in your eyes. And they just, okay. So that is one thing that you can work with it. Be careful of cultural taboos. For example, in some cultures, showing the soles of your feet is shameful. I have a friend who was a photographer, and he had to photograph the president of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak, him meeting with someone else, and the other person had their legs crossed and their soles of the foot facing Mubarak. And this friend of mine took the picture, and they actually ran the picture, and that was shameful to the president. So he got pushed off the presidential list for a few years. So just be aware of taboos. And when you shoot ultra tight, when do we shoot ultra tight? Like on the face, and we'll show some pictures. And when do we give the subject space to breathe? Because there's value in both of those. Obviously, if you give a subject space to breathe, you having more of a background in it, and the background can easily compete. So you have to kind of weigh it up. I think there was some more stuff at the bottom, but anyway, let's go to the choice of lenses. For most of the time that I have done street photography and document photography, I walked around with a fixed 35mm lens and a fixed 100mm lens, and about 90% of all my shots in Egypt were done with this lens, a little 35, because I enjoy the feeling of being there, but I don't want I don't want to use an ultra wide angle that distorts and so on. And the 35 is about the best I can do. So yeah, a long lens tends to uh, full sensor. But if it's on a crop, it'll probably be it would probably be about a 41 millimeter or something like that. Yeah. Longer lenses it exaggerates strength because it compresses the face. So if a person has a long face, it pushes everything closer together and it looks like it's a strength. So you kind of have to choose what you want to show and use the lens that works for you. I'll be walking up and down here. Okay, so here we go. We're just going to run through some pictures and you'll see some of the stuff that I talked about. So these are all people from Darfur. The top left one was not, but all the others are over the 35. And you know, the problem is that picture there, you arrive and everybody, all the kids just swamp around you and like, where do you put your lens, you know? That was really funny. They must have had their first experiences of workers. This thing is not doing so good. And because I arrived and they ran out and said, okay, okay. So someone must have said, okay, you know, okay. I don't know. He had to have been there.
35 instead of 50, because I've always been kind of taught and thought the 50 is more of actually what the human eye sees. That's what you kind of want to use. So why do you go with 35?
It's my choice.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I like to be really close because you'll find that your personal space that you intrude on also influences what the pictures look like. The further you stand, the more, I don't know, aloof it feels. The closer you are, the more they, yeah, that's, I don't know. It was a very good question. Almost had me stumped there. So that's also Darfur. I'll show you a series of pictures of those two a bit later on. I was further away and then a bit closer and a bit closer, and you can see the expressions in their face change as I get closer. Men, these are with a 70 to 200. 70 to 200, yeah, all of those are. Because they would beat me up if I got closer. So now we're going to go to the golden hour, and it's not often that we're lucky enough that we get bright enough, low light that is dim enough that people don't blink their eyes. So I was in Sudan, and this was just this is on top of a truck. This is stuff that they offloading. This is in the desert. Good morning. In South Africa. Mamdua. See, there you have some shadows, but that's still doable because you can see light over there. Darfur. Okay, harsh light and other lighting challenges. Okay, so a friend of mine that was part of the Cairo Camera Club asked me about it, and I said, well, why don't we go out and we do like a exercise? So I took this picture because there's bright light here, but there's this guy here, and this guy is obviously the center of interest, but the exposure is totally lost in here. If you exposed for this, then all of that would be totally out. So here was also an example, taking a picture here. If you expose for the highlights, you got that. If you expose for the shadows, these guys came into focus, but that is totally burnt out. But it's just an exercise. So here you have a busy street. This is on the shadow area, and that's in the light area, and you can see the disparity in light between the two areas. So same thing here, light over there, shadows over here, and I chose to just work in the shadows, and this works better. So here we spotted this guy, and that looks pretty, but he should be the center of interest. So tried to take a picture of him, but there it was too dark, so exposed for the shadows. Not a great picture, but just a exerciser. And then we walked around and did some pictures where we took a reading first in the shadows, and we knew what the exposure was and the white balance was, and we just walked around and took pictures in the shadows. And you can see they're all equally exposed. There's light where it should be. This is really hard. Well, this was actually on a news strip. It was the middle of the day, very dark skin, and yeah, that didn't work. But when I put them over here, I could at least get some detail in there. But that's just an example. Okay, so that's the original. It was in the middle of the day, very dark skin, wearing white clothes. What on earth do? You're supposed to send it to a newspaper. So I thought, okay, you could do that. You can maybe, with Photoshop, bring some of that out, and you can do a heavy edit on it, or you can change it to black and white and work with that. So that's what we did. That's one we sent. Same one over here. And that's the one we sent, black and white. Because newspapers don't really mind, as long as it's news. So year two, this was very soft, and just with a bit of Photoshop, I was able to bring some of the detail out in it. Same one over here. That's the guy over there. Here, the background is now white. That's one, and then the black and white one is the one that we sent. Women in the middle of the day wearing black veils. What a challenge. I mean, you're supposed to capture the eye. So I would just pull the frame and then just expose for the shadows, and the eye is really just popped out. These kids were playing. This was also sometime in the middle of the day, so I just had them, they were just doing that, and I was taking pictures of them. Okay, again, middle of the day in Libya, Benghazi. So I found this kid, and he was like under someone's flag or something. And so I just chose to go tight on him and just place him in the shadow of the flag. These ladies well, this is actually more photojournalism, but it qualifies as a portrait as well. Also close to the middle of the day, so I just went against the light and exposed for the shadows. So do we shoot tight, or do we leave room for it to breathe? So that one, I had to send a bunch of pictures of these guys that were brick makers in the Nile River. So I chose one tight one. So that's just kind of breathing. And the background is not too bad. This one also with that background. I chose to offset someone else on this person. The one thing about when you shoot tight, make sure that it feels deliberate, not accidental. This one feels accidental. This one feels like it's deliberate. These two ladies, this is just the saddest picture of him. That's a nice shot that, well, it's a shot that gives you the sense of room to breathe because there's nothing that really takes away from it. Yeah, there are all these light spots, but it kind of works together. There's a story everywhere, yeah. Yeah, they wanted something with space to put text, so I gave them a shot like that. Oh, there's that one. Okay, the effects of entering someone's personal space and how it affects the pictures. So here are those pictures. I first, and that's all with a 35mm lens. I was there, and I took pictures, and they were smiling, and they were a bit warmer there, and yeah, they were shyer. And I'm not sure which one's the best. Maybe this one over here. This one is more real to me than the others. I don't know. Up to you. Okay, here's this little girl, and I kind of like the looser one because it's got these in the background. That's a single. Here's some more pics, and so just feel free to stop me and ask questions. Yes, sir.
Hang on, Bill.
Going back to the photo where you showed 3 different examples with the light, it was a gentleman. One of them was pretty flat. That's what you started with the original. Then you brought out and you showed the lines and textures in his face. From a journalistic point of view, you said you photoshopped to bring that out. What's the line where you think you can't go too far photojournalist, to bring the texture out? You see what I'm saying? You are changing the original exposure. I'm not sure which one it was, but you had the example of 3.
Yeah, another one. Going back there.
Okay.
Going back in time.
Yep. It was one of the first half dozen you showed us.
Yep.
There. Okay.
one?
Good.
No, I think
You obviously brought out the texture in his face, yes?
yeah, I did.
Okay. My question is, yes, the texture was there, but you edited the photo and changed the original capture in a journalistic photo. What's the line that you will allow you to do that, but a line that you won't cross? I asked that as a former photojournalist.
I actually sent that one.
Pardon me?
I sent that one. That's just for me.
Oh, you sent the original then. Okay. I was just curious.
And that was the same for that one. That was too flat. That wasn't enough, and that was too worked.
Yes.
And that one, and that's the one that we sent.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a feel for what you think you're allowed to do as a photojournalist, because it's always a huge argument. It's a big gray area.
Yep.
And I just wanted to get a feel for what you were doing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And yes, in photojournalism, you are basically only allowed to do what you could have done in the darkroom. So, well, to some extent.
Okay, well,
Yep.
I mean, we're not going to add anything, and we're not going to take anything away.
No.
But that's obviously changing the impression you have of him
Hmm.
when you Photoshop a photo. So that's why I'm asking, trying to get a feel for it.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. Totally, dude. My California stuff is coming out. Okay. There we Okay. So here's I was asked uh, by a movie company in South Africa to shoot the cast of their show. So I decided I'll just found the spot and just did everything there. And again, we're trying to work with backgrounds that work. So I try to just frame them in this frame and then have the backgrounds. And look, and that was the final one. I had to do some school shots for a school in Cairo. And so rather than hold down lights, I just pose them in a dark, in a shady area. Yes, sir.
Wally, is that all natural light, or is there any reflector there, or that's
There's
just shade?
Just shade.
Oh.
How is the shady character? So yeah, I was asked to do these school portraits. And so I just found a shady area there, and I did some portraits of them. That's my mother. She would have been, how old would she have been? 106 if she was still alive. That's with window light. And this is just in the shadows, just, you know. Against the light. This guy was in deep shadow. He was inside a coffee shop, and I used a 35 f 1.4 wide open. And the problem with that is that you have very limited depth of field. I mean, this was right in front of him, and this was totally out of focus. Yes.
Again, just out of curiosity, on the picture on the right, did you do any post-processing work on the eye, the whites of the eyes, or is that
That's
normal?
That's just how it was.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I do my normal levels on the face and so on, but nothing more. And I have a long story with this, but so making use of directional light, I asked the guy to stand just there, and he looked at me, and the shadows under his eyes. So I said, "Look at the sun," and he said, "Where there?" Yeah, there. And this is just in shadows, just in open shadow. This I think was done with a 70-200. Probably f2.8 or f4. The story with this girl is that I'm not sure if I've told you guys about the stuff that was happening in Darfur. When I spoke to the doctors in the medical centers, they reckon that 70 to 75% of everybody, all the women and children in Darfur had been either raped or had a loved one raped or had witnessed a rape. And so they think that some of the rapes are not reported because according to the government, if you don't have 4 witnesses about this, then you get arrested for, what's the word? Never mind. It was at a truck stop, and there were just a lot of men there, and she was just hanging out there. I think she was serving them tea and stuff like that. No, I think it was 2.8. Yeah. Anyway, this woman, you know, normally when I would walk up to a woman, they would like make themselves ready and smile and look at you, and it's like there's a dignity in their faces, even though they've gone through hell. And this woman could not look up and could not look me in the eye, no matter what I did. It's like there obviously has been trauma and so on. I normally shoot, if I'm shooting with a 35, it depends. If it's really dark, I might go f4 or f5.6, or even f2 if it's really dark. And if I'm dealing with a busy background, it will probably be wide open, which in this case is f2.
Well, which brings up my question. What is your preferred settings? And do you shoot in manual or shutter priority? Or if you're choosing I mean, how do you, when you're walking down the street looking, what mode are you in?
I'm in totally manual. I've set my ISO manually. I've taken a meter reading manually. You know, if I know that I'm shooting against the light, 1 meter reading will be the same everywhere I go. And I just set it at that. My f-stop will be, I'd like it to be f2, but very often if you shoot at f2, you lose a lot of depth of field. So I normally go to f4 or f5.6. And you still have a drop off, but you still have the main things sharp.
Do you always use a handheld meter to meter the light, or do you trust the camera at all? Seems like you're always using a meter.
Most of the time I use a meter. Now with R3, you can actually see what it does in the camera, and I'm starting to trust that. Maybe.
With the light mirror.
Yeah. The Indabella in South Africa. Inside. This is the film days. The golden hour. This is in Yemen. I just love how this girl eyes are almost yellow. some gentlemen. And this was in Libya. I went to a square in Benghazi, and this guy made food for everybody, just free. So every lunchtime I would go there and have my stew. So this is all in the shadows. Middle of the day, but who cares? It's in the shadows. And yeah, I used a wider lens, and you can see how this here is a bit exaggerated. And this was shot with the old 17 to 35, which was not very sharp at all. I mean, you can see this area is, yeah, totally unsharp. So I now use a 16 to 35. Same thing there. This was with a 35. And you can see with F2, this just got totally lost. That's with the 70 to 200, and you can see how close this guy is to bright sunlight. Here's the bright sunlight right here, and he's right in the open shade. Too sweet. That old lady again. And this woman in Darfur, to me, just was so regal. You know, she's obviously been through hell, but she still has a dignity, and that's a blue tarp behind her. And this was a case of the middle of the daylight, and she was against a wall, and then and this one too. And then we go to Yemen, and they chew cut, and there's just like 100 ways to, and 100,000 different people to photograph, because they're all interesting, and they're chewing their little bubbles. At about middle of the day, each can buy themselves a little thing of cut, and they just chew away.
Ones of those two shot.
That would be the 35. Yeah. 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 You know, your depth of field is not only a function of the f-stop, also a function of how close you are to your subject. There's this same girl again. And this is with a window light. There was the window just over here. I took a picture of her, and then the kid came and she went, "Get away, get away." This was dark. Holy moly. That was like, it was one room, one tiny room with a small window up there somewhere. And I was able to pull it out with a 35 1.4. Anything, you know, I just go, and I hope one of them is sharp. And also, you know, I mean, these were shot probably with a 1D, so it was probably about an ISO of 1600 or so, which now obviously you can go much higher, and it's no longer a problem. But yeah. And these are my friends, Bedouins that I went to go see often. inside a tent. And I believe that's it. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free.
100. Why the 35 millimeter lens, not the 50 millimeter, the 85 or 135?
I like to work close to people because I like to have the sense of being there. And when you work close to people, there's a bond. If you use a longer lens, they feel like they're outside and they can just. But the moment you come closer, there's a response there, and it could be wider, it could be 50 mm lens, same thing. It just gives me enough so I can include background and stuff like that, because I was going through a phase where I wanted to do contextual type portraits, and so this was good to me. And I choose the 100 because it's the lens that will flatter the face the most. Somewhere between 85 and about 135, but the 100 is like the.
Anybody else?
To what extent did you direct them or pose them or ask them to do things to make the picture you want?
Except for the paid portraits, nothing. I would just pick my camera up and I would walk around a bit until I see what works out and then take the picture. And because I speak Arabic, I could ask them if it's okay if I take a picture, and they'd say, yeah, okay. Which is amazing because normally with Muslim women, that's a no-no, and they would just, yeah, sure.
Here in the States, people have this habit of doing that canned smile if you ask them to take your photo. Do you find you still get that in other countries? Or, is there anything you do to get past that?
Believe me, being closer to them does something for them. If I pick my camera up, you go, but when I go, your face starts to change.
Oh.
You know what I mean? And, I think it's very different in the States because it's obviously you're dealing with a culture that has been photographed, and there's a lot of I don't know, taboos about being photographed, and no, I don't want a picture taken. No.
I got a question. A couple times you referenced white balance. If I look at your camera, what is your white balance set at?
Right now,
You use automatic, or do you actually meter the light with something?
right now it's actually an automatic because I don't know where I'm going to be.
Do you ever change it? I mean, actually meter it, or is it always pretty much, what is it, automatic, sunshade?
If I'm walking on one side of the street and it's shade, I set my to shade or cloudy. Sometimes your shade setting is too yellow, so I just go with your shadow is too yellow, so I just have it on shade. If I'm in a controlled situation where I'm doing portraits of people coming in, I do a manual balance with a piece of white paper, take a picture, use the paper as my white balance setting.
You don't ever set it to like 5200 Kelvin or something like that.
Well, if I shoot in RAW, I can see what my white balance was in one picture, and then when I process all the others, I can just type it in. So manual, and then in raw, I changed what I.
Yeah, the only reason I asked.
Totally
sometimes
messed
they come
up.
out a little bit different. You know, I took a picture the other day and the sun was changing and that, and I looked at it through the viewfinder and I'm like, oh crap, you know, I should have actually changed it. I would have been going, now I can run it through Photoshop and I can fix it.
Yeah.
But it would but been much nicer to maybe meter it with something and know exactly what to set it at,
Yeah.
you know, to get what I expected.
I mean, you can set in your camera, you can set your white balance to a number of manual settings and you can just flip between them.
As if you're doing candid, if you're going down the street, and let's see, I know you're using your manual meter, but the camera meters have gotten so good now. Can you go back to the last slide? No, not that one.
Oh, that was the
That one,
best
yes.
one.
Where there's exceptionally bright reflection on the back or a window in the tent.
Yeah.
To do that. Wouldn't the cameras nowadays, something like center weighted, or wouldn't that do you just not trust them? Or shouldn't the camera be
Well,
able to
I-
compensate for that as long as you knew?
You know, I think that each person has their own way of doing it. Maybe it's with on automatic and then compensating, but you will probably still need to some manual intervention to make that happen. For me, it's just easier to do the reading. Now with the R3, where if I change my exposure, it shows on the back what it actually looks like. So I can actually judge on my R3, you know, that the meter is actually wrong. It needs to be one stop that way, you know, whatever. So coming around.
Take the R3 then as a,
Yeah.
How do you feel about shooting mirrorless now as opposed to the SLR that you used to? Because I haven't been able to adapt over to that yet.
I like both. I mean, I shoot with 1DXs and also a R3. The picture quality is the same. They both handle ISO very well. The R3 gives me a better frame rate when I shoot sport, and it's much lighter. Apart from that, I don't know. I was the man, I had to buy something.
Is that it? Anybody else? Okay, well, thanks so much, Wally. You gave us an awful lot to think about. Three things real briefly. Number one, if you need a name tag, please sign up here because I'm going to cut the point at some point and somebody's going to say, oh, I need another name tag and I've already made the order. Secondly, especially those of you at home, we have air show tickets here to be picked up. You have to have your physical ticket to get in there. We'll be here next Wednesday from 6 o'clock on and next Friday from 6 o'clock on. And there was one more thing. Those of you who have signed up for the picnic, it's going to be awesome. Bring an appetite. 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Thank you. Enjoy your evening.